everybody. Welcome back to FoxNews.com Live. So this is an interesting question because many people were forced against their will to evacuate, given government orders to say, listen, we're going to send a body bag. They're going around writing your name down if you refuse to leave because they're saying you're putting yourself in danger. But a lot of people were like, look, I want to stay here, stay in my home. I don't have any other place to go that I feel comfortable or safe. So the question is, is it legal? Can you force someone to comply with a state or municipality evacuation order and tell them, get up, get going, or we're going to take you in? Doug?
I am not ashamed to admit that during the hurricane, I did not know the answer to that question. And then I researched it, and the answer is yes. It's well settled legally that in the exercise of the police power, the state has the authority, because of public emergency, obviously,
right,
to tell you that you must mandatorily evacuate. That was the easy part. That part I did know, although I didn't know specifically that the courts had addressed it under police power. What I didn't know, Dan, is can they arrest you and is it a criminal offense? And the answer, Dan just told me in New York, they've already made it a misdemeanor to refuse. But the simple answer, before I turn it over, is that if a state has a statute that says disobedience with a mandatory evacuation order is a criminal offense, usually a misdemeanor, then the answer is you can be arrested.
All right,
in New York, it would be the misdemeanor.
Right.
I don't know if it's specific for evacuations or just a general obstructing governmental administration charge.
Right.
But
good point. You have that statute.
Right. But Mayor Bloomberg said beforehand that we're ordering people to evacuate. We're not going to come around arresting people. You're really telling people, look, you have to leave. The big issue here is people may not leave, and then emergency services still have to go and rescue them if they're in a lot of trouble.
I was just going to say, you also have civil liability, potentially,
Right.
I saw and read, which would be if, for example, there was a lot of cost associated with rescuing you, you could be liable for that. But the other thing, I don't know if you caught, this was the two kayakers?
Right.
Explain that one.
That was in Westchester, near where I live, and rescue work, unfortunately, one died. They went kayaking.
Oh, is that true? I thought they were both rescued. Okay.
Well, it might have been a different case.
No, there was one in Staten Island. Sorry.
Okay, in Westchester, people were going kayaking, rafting right after the hurricane in the rough waters.
Yeah.
One of them did die, but 3 rescue workers were injured trying to save them. And
See,
that's the real
the
issue
point.
here.
It's just very selfish. I mean, right, Jeff? I mean, other people's lives are in danger. If they have to go in and evacuate you because you won't leave, then you've got to send in 3 to save 1, etc., and they can be injured as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the most interesting ways I've seen this handled, or at least that I read, and I can't remember where it was, where they issue a mandatory evacuation, and then if the people refuse and they end up having to get rescued, then they actually have to pay what that costs, which I think is an interesting way to enforce it. I don't really know how easy that is to do, but I know that another concern in one of the articles that I read just recently dealt with people with special needs and how difficult it is to issue mandatory evacuations and then get those people out of there, is it really safer to do that or leave them where they are, where they have access to what they need, whether it's medication or facilities or things like that. I know with the elderly people they were trying to evacuate, that was their big concern, is they didn't want to get loaded into buses and then spend 3 days in a high school gymnasium.
Right.
But one other point is that what's interesting is that it actually reduces municipal liability. In other words, they say you must mandatorily evacuate. So then legally, I would imagine you're precluded from any lawsuit, right? If you're injured.
Well, that's the thing.
If you're following...
What kind of
if you do not follow the evacuation and then you're injured, you're not bringing a lawsuit against the municipality. They said, wait, we issued a mandatory evacuation order.
Right.
Well, they could probably try to take it to court, but they're not going to get there. This is my favorite. Atlantic City. Well, how great was Chris Christie, right? Telling everyone on the Jersey Shore, you're tanning out, you're done, get the hell off it. I love it.
Do you?
I do, because you know what? People need to get it together.
Plain talk.
Yeah. Let's not, mince words and nuance it. Get the hell off the beach. Okay, so here's some people. He didn't use the same language at the Best of Life Park. The Best of Life Park, it's so cute. They describe it as a sturdy building with little glass that sits between 2 casinos. Talk about the best of life. Like, to the left or to the right? Which one's hitting today? Perfect. So there was a bunch of the residents there that are elderly, and they didn't want to leave, so they all camped out and had casino night and played bingo and watched cable till it went out. About 100 of them left. The rest of them didn't. So, you know, he even went on, Christie did, and implored them. There's about 600 people that stayed, and they just wouldn't go. It was a, you know, senior tower thing.
You know, there's also a related sort of property concept, as dumb as that sounds, that goes all the way back to the beginning. And you see a lot of property owners saying, look, I want to stay with my house.
Right.
You know, my home is my castle type of thing.
Right. Some people are worried about flooding they want to deal with. Some people are worried about looting. They don't want to leave their communities. These seniors, you can understand that some of them were not in great health, and as was already said, they'd be spending 3 days in a gym somewhere rather than in their homes. But if they're in trouble, emergency services have to go through whatever dangers there are.
Then they got mad, Jeff, because they said, what kind of insult is this? Some of them, I guess, are 62. They're living the high life. Hey, nice to retire at 62. And they're there. They said, what does it mean? We've lost our minds because we're 62 years old. And one of the ladies, Helen Francesconi, she's a former legal secretary who describes herself as, quote, 85 and still kicking. Sounds like a match.
They had a lot of community pride. I liked the my favorite part of that, I think, is that they had these elected floor captains, and they were going to put their faith in the floor captains to lead them to wherever they needed to go. If you know, and who knows how the floor captains were, but I think a lot of this had to do with community pride, and to a certain level, thank God nothing happened to them as far as I know, but I kind of respect that level of community pride. They say, hey, my home is my castle, we're not going anywhere, and we're not that old.
Right.
Also, you know, there's different levels of sort of, you know, local knowledge and machismo, for lack of a better word. I saw guys who are unbelievable. They're like, you know, this inlet and that harbor. They were true experts. And the point is, and, you know, I have a rowboat and I have this. So the point is, obviously, somebody who's infirm and elderly and can't get around is a far cry from somebody who's a complete and total expert, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and then they got mad. They want an apology now at the Best Life Towers because they said that they don't appreciate Chris Christie referring to them as those people. Oh, my God. He should just go. Listen, I would solve this so easily. I'd be like, hey, Chris Christie, let's go over there. We just play some bingo with them, have some Jello cups. I mean, it's the best.
Do some slots at the casino with the seniors.
Let me tell you something. I can't wait to go to one of those homes. I will love it. You play all the games. They have activities, little sing-alongs.
Well, speaking of bingo, on the Tonight Show last night, they always joke around with crazy stuff. So he goes, here's a bingo card from one of the clubs. P. He goes, that's some bingo game, huh?
Oh, my God.
Poor
bingo.
It was so funny.
I know. Bingo's fun. You can win some money. All right, let's move forward now. We've got another great story about a Facebook boasting leading to an arrest. Take a look at this. We have a package prepared for you from one of our affiliates, KDFW's Laurie Barger, about this story.
In April, the Supreme Court of Texas added social media outlets to the list of no-nos for jurors. A judge gives the instructions at the beginning of every case, restricting them from talking to people outside the courtroom about what goes on inside. Jonathan Hudson's attorney says he doesn't know why his client did it. A few clicks of the keyboard nearly landed a Tarrant County juror in jail. Despite being instructed by the judge not to talk to anyone about the trial, Jonathan Hudson logged on to Facebook to bring his friends up to speed on his jury duty, and he contacted the female defendant he had seen in court.
The very next morning, the defendant notified her attorney, who in turn notified the judge.
Next thing he knew, 22-year-old Jonathan Hudson was kicked off the jury and prosecuted on contempt of court charges. The possible punishment, up to 6 months in jail. Jonathan Hudson hired defense attorney Steve Gordon.
Maybe he didn't realize how serious a situation it was by doing his everyday activity. I think he does now.
Assistant Tarrant County District Attorney Chris Ponder says consequences are necessary because the outcome of any trial depends on jurors' impartiality.
Oh, it could absolutely taint a case. Anytime you have a relationship develop between a party and a juror that is not confined to the evidence presented in the courtroom, that's a problem.
Jonathan Hudson pleaded guilty to 4 counts of contempt of court. He was sentenced to perform community service for 2 days with the court jury bailiff. In the Fort Worth newsroom, Laurie Barriger, Fox 4 News.
All right, so what do you make of this story now?
Well, all of this newfangled technology is really just what we've always had. In other words, if you say you can't talk to somebody, well, that means you also can't Facebook message them, you can't email them, and so on. But I'll argue both sides of it. On the one hand, yes, of course, what he did is crazy. You don't reach out and communicate. But I think the defense lawyer made an ostensibly good point, saying, perhaps he didn't realize how serious it was. And look, they gave him 2 days community service. He definitely shouldn't have done it. But the message is, everybody's got to realize, Facebook, Twitter, emailing, it's the same as talking to somebody.
There you go. Thank you for that.
Isn't that very deep, insightful?
Deep. Yeah.
As Howard Cosell would say, very perspicacious.
Exactly. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, we've all tried cases, and you know how many times the judge during the trial says, don't talk to the defendant, don't talk to the defendant. So for him to think, well, I won't talk to her, but I'll Facebook friend her.
It's crazy.
What planet does he think that that's acceptable on?
Planet Love.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But certainly, it goes against all common sense.
Yeah, good point.
I'm just saying, what's the motive there? All right, well, Jeff, what do you think? Do you think this was appropriate? Did the punishment fit the crime?
Whether or not the punishment fit the crime, I'm not really sure. But I can tell you that Facebook is intertwined in everything we do in the legal world now. And the first thing I tell my clients is pretty much delete your Facebook page. Yeah. Because they will inevitably post something or do something ridiculous or embarrassing or to hurt their case without thinking about it. It's as if they're just posting it and it's just for them.
Well, that's why they're
everyone forgets.
Let's be honest.
Right. Exactly.
Good point.
Yeah. But if smart people were criminals, I'd have no clients at all. So
that's the thing. So you need to be
come on, I have some smart clients.
You do?
I do.
They must be watching at home. So
that's interesting.
They're all watching.
Yeah, well, we've all heard the felony stupid phrase or whatever, but there are some nice people that make some mistakes that, then learn from them, but the criminal recidivists, I have no time for whatsoever. Let's talk a little bit about this story that's on Fox News, a national search group joining the hunt for the missing Ohio woman, Caitlin Markham. Doug?
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, like every other case, they have to just interview everybody who's close to her, track her movements, credit cards, phones, emails, computer.
She's been gone 2 weeks now so far.
Terrible case.
Texas-based EquiSearch is going to be Ohio Tuesday to search for her. She's 19. She was last seen, I guess, at her home in Fairfield near Cincinnati, and it's interesting because we've seen a couple of these cases reported missing by the fiance, Dan. Right. I don't know.
Yeah, and as we've talked about on another show, there is rarely a case where a total stranger kidnaps, abducts, kills somebody. So you have to look at the fiance. Where was he? What does he know? Who does she know? If I was investigating this, I'd want her computer to know who was she talking with. We talked about Facebook a moment ago. Who was she talking with on Facebook, other sites? She could be having relationships online with people or just talking to people who are pretending to be one thing and really are predators.
You're so right, because the more of this electronic technology, I mean, every one of us, you and I will walk out of this studio, we'll be looking at
and check your
BlackBerry,
Facebook.
checking everything.
Yeah,
right, so
Twitter.
The point is, I mean, we don't go 5 minutes probably without some electronic activity. It's both good and bad. I mean, sometimes I look at the thing like it's science fiction, remembering wistfully back to like when I was in college and I had no cell phone, no nothing, and it was great.
Okay, but here's an
frees
issue.
You up and also
Jeff,
ties
here's
you
an
up.
issue here. So the fiance said that he last saw her when the two were discussing a possible move to Colorado, and he said, he's worried about it because, in particular, they were talking about moving. They pushed it back from October to November. He goes, well, listen, I wasn't trying to make her do anything she didn't want to do. I would have pushed it back a year if she needed. I don't know what he's saying. Maybe she ran off because of that, or what do you think, Jeff?
Well, I mean, just like everyone else, I have no idea at this point. I think that, sure, he's certainly a person of interest at this point, but those first 48 hours are critical. So, so much has happened with that investigation right now, and we have no idea what that is.
Well, and okay. I was just going to say, they questioned him further, the fiance, Mr. Carter, and said, what do you mean by forced? You wouldn't have forced her to do anything. And he said, well, just, going to Colorado, the marriage, the whole thing, it was entirely up to her. And then he told police, he's like, by the way, there was a festival going on right up the street with, quote, a lot of questionable people up there.
Right. Well, you could view that certainly.
Either way.
Yeah, as a fake attempt to deflect blame or legitimate. I mean, I don't know.
The significant other is always the prime person to look at, and unfortunately, he might
And
have
here's
the
a
keys to
picture
it.
of Caitlin
Right.
Mark.
Even if he wasn't involved in her disappearance, he should know enough about her life that maybe he could get information to the authorities that would lead to whoever did harm her, if someone did.
That's her picture, and if you have any information about the whereabouts of Caitlin Markham, you can contact Crime Stoppers 513-352-3040 or the Fairfield Police Department at 513-829-8201. She's 5'3". We've got the picture of her. Maybe you can split screen it. 5'3", weighs 130 pounds. Green eyes, brown hair, and she has blonde highlights. So let's see if we don't know if she went off on her own or maybe from a fight or something, got upset. But they're trying to figure out what's going on. 2 weeks is a long time to not be able to catch someone. So guys, the lead story on FoxNews.com right now, ATF director, this is the whole Gunwalker case, reassigned amid uproar. So we have the acting ATF director, Kenneth Melson, has been reassigned to a lesser post in the Justice Department, and the U.S. Attorney for Arizona has also been pushed out. This is all in fallout from Operation Fast and the Furious. There's a big investigation going on. That investigation's reaching new heights at the present moment. So we've got all the full coverage on there if you click on it. And this is the statement of Attorney General Eric Holder, my favorite, on the resignation of U.S. Attorney for the District of Arizona, Dennis Burke. Okay, so this is for Arizona. He issued the following statement. United States Attorney Dennis Burke has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office, first as a line prosecutor over a decade ago and more recently as U.S. Attorney. Goes on to talk about his pursuits of justice, great progress in the pursuit of justice, creation of special units focusing on civil rights, outreach to key communities, particularly in the Indian country. So it seems like he's praising him and saying that he also was someone who had a quick response when Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was critically injured, and he said his actions and conduct were crucial in charging and arresting the alleged shooter. So that's it. So no criticism in the statement. I guess just me kind of giving him a swan song type of thing, Jeff. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's no. I just think he was trying to support him as much as he could. I am surprised there was no criticism because I was certainly critical of that. So I would expect to hear a little bit more, quite frankly.
What do you think, Doug? I mean, this
You're
is
gonna
covering
hear more,
bases.
yeah. There's a couple of interesting things here. First of all, just technical point, ATF did not used to be in the Justice Department. It used to be part of the Treasury Department when I was an assistant. And when I dealt with ATF, they were Treasury agents. So when I first read the story about the Justice Department and ATF, I was confused. Okay, fine. But after the Fast and Furious, I don't know if you guys remember, all of a sudden they turned around and they made a mandatory rule saying that gun store owners in 4 states would have to send in reports if anybody bought more than one high-powered rifle. And in the statute, it said anybody who bought more than one handgun, they'd have to send in the reports. And so there was a dust-up over that, and which simply brought back into the forefront that in the Fast and Furious operation, it became very embarrassing, egg on ATF's face, for lack of a better term, because a lot of the weapons turned up in the hands of serious criminals and drug dealers. And then when a federal agent was killed, apparently one of the weapons surfaced there. So I think that's at the heart of what's going on here.
Right, and the statement by Eric Holder, those are boilerplate statements.
Oh, of course. I was just going to say.
Right.
I mean,
you can't read much into that.
No. That's
they cite your resume and they wish you
and
well.
he's not going to burn the guy because they want him to testify and give any information about him. All right, well, we have to take a break, but I want to thank Jeff King, criminal defense attorney out of the Dallas Bureau, for being on the program with us today. Thank you so much, Jeff.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to take a break. You two gentlemen are going to remain, Ken and Doug, and we're going to be joined by my colleague Lise Wheel. The Wheel of Justice is coming up next. After the break, you don't want to miss it. Stay with us.